Part 47. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 461. In the Jade Pendant. A man in white clothes with a majestic face was standing here, looking around with curious eyes. This person is Dylan, the master of the human race temple. This jade pendant was asked by Qin Feng's master Jiking to wear it. Qin Feng didn't know that the emperor's presence was hidden in this jade pendant. But he still vaguely felt something in the jade pendant. Even so, he just pretended not to see it. This profound heaven sect is not necessarily better than our human temple. The polarization is also very serious. Dylan touched his chin and made a cheerful sound. Sure enough, the profound heaven sect without Qin Xian is just a piece of loose sand. I don't know how long this Lin Tian can hold it. Dylan looked at Lin Tian, who lived at the head of the hall. Although Lin Tian is extremely talented and has the blessing of Tian Dao body, it is still not enough in the eyes of Dylan. He was not as decisive as Qin Xian in handling matters. It's still too young. It seems like this can be done easily. Dylan smiled and shook his head. It seems that he has seen the profound heaven sect surrendering at his feet. Little did he know that all this had been seen by Qin Xian, who was hiding in the dark. Qin Xian's eyes can look into the shattering void and see through everything. He could tell when a woman had given birth to a child and survived intact, let alone the emperor's presence hidden in the jade pendant. It's just that Qin Xian didn't know who Dao Emperor Lin was, but he saw that Emperor Lin's strength was at the ancestral level. I want to see what kind of disturbance a person hidden in a jade pendant wants to stir up in my profound heaven section. Qin Xian looked at the scene in front of him with cold eyes, and his body exuded terrifying pressure. This coercion directly shattered the nearby space and crushed the great Dao laws together, playing with them like a sphere. It seems that at this moment, everything in the world will be controlled by great Dao in his hands. In the main hall, Qin Feng was defending what he had done before, begging Lin Tianneng to let him come back regardless of past suspicions. But this behavior caused a group of senior executives to look at him with anger, pointing their fingers at his nose and shouting curses. Qin Feng! You rip-off bitch, you really have the nerve to say these things. A white-haired old man frowned, holding a fly whisk in his hand, his eyes full of resentment towards Qin Feng. He didn't care about his appearance at all and started yelling curses in the hall. You are a person who did whatever it takes to gain strength, betrayed the sect master, and defected to the human temple. You still want to come back? Do you think this is possible? People like you really have no sense of shame. You are just like that despicable rat. You only know how to steal but don't know how to feed and clothe yourself. This behavior also attracted everyone behind him to follow suit. If someone takes the lead, others will naturally follow. Suddenly, everyone's eyes turned to Qin Feng, which made those who wanted to defend Qin Feng speechless. His face looked bitter. There is no way, there are too many people, no matter how hard you spray, you can't spray, you can only stare at each other like this. Lin Tian, people like you should go to hell and endure 18 kinds of torture until death. No matter what you do today, there is no way you can return to the section. Even if the current sect master agrees, we old guys don't agree. Yes. That's right, we will never allow you to return to the sect. Listening to the insulting words, ugly faces, and harsh expressions, Qin Feng breathed a sigh of relief. His face remained calm and calm. He never cared for insults. After all, he had never betrayed the sect, never, and what he did was what his master ordered him to do. Even if you want to scold, you should scold Qin Xian instead of scolding him. But there is no way, these people simply can't stand themselves. Qin Feng could also guess why. After all, now is the time when the elders of the sect are competing with each other for dominance. The position of the 8 peak masters at the beast control peak is vacant, and a new person is needed to serve as the peak master of this peak. It is precisely because of this that all the elders began to compete with each other for benefit, constantly taking credit and flattering Lin Tian. It can be said that as long as he can promote himself to a higher position, he said a lot of good things, but Lin Tian did not listen. Just throwing out a sentence, those who are capable are superior to those who are incompetent. After hearing this, many elders had no choice but to find other ways. This situation lasted for about 10 years before it was changed, and Lin Tian had already selected the candidate to be the master of the beast control peak. Everyone was also looking forward to who would be the peak master. Just when everything was ready to be said, Qin Feng came back. Let those who are trying to seize the profits all look shocked. Qin Feng and the others had naturally heard that the previous generation's peak master of the beast control peak had gone to the human race temple for some reasons. That's why the position of the peak master became vacant. As a result, now that he is back, doesn't it mean that the position of the master of the beast control peak will be returned to his hands? But how do those people agree? I have been working hard for more than 10 years to become the master of the beast control peak. But at this moment you come back. Doesn't that mean you want to go against me? It is precisely because of this that Qin Feng attracted a group of people to scold him and vent their unhappiness. Betraying the sect was just their reason. Even if Qin Feng did not betray the sect, they would find other reasons. He just wanted to use this to force Qin Feng back so that he could not return to the sect. He cannot inherit the position of the master of the beast control peak. Do you really think everyone is stupid? No, these people are not stupid, on the contrary, they are very smart. Normally, Lin Tian couldn't control them, because these people always used his identity as an old man of the sect to reason. This left Lin Tian helpless. It's not easy to deal with these people, so I can only try to comfort them. But the consolation had no effect, and within a few days, they began to make the same mistakes again. Because in their eyes, Lin Tian was just a young man, and he became the sect leader just because he was Qin Xian's disciple. Unless Qin Xian is here, it's almost the same. Because only when Qin Xian is around, these people dare not make mistakes and try to restrain their prestige. They didn't know the news that Qin Xian was alive. The news of Qin Xian's return was only known to some senior executives of Profound Heaven sect. Although these people are high-level people, they are just high-level people with status. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 462. Only the 8 peak masters enshrinement halls are the real high-level ones. To put it simply, these people are cronies. This is also the reason why they want to compete for the position of Master of the Beast Control Peak. Because only in this way can they obtain the sect's more powerful techniques and secrets. His family's power can also gain a firm foothold in the sect. After the words fell, everyone looked startled, and then some people began to retort unconvinced. Instead, they continued to let them run rampant in the sect. What's more, he even knelt down directly. Harm the sect. Lin Tian was so frightened by this kneeling that he hurriedly walked down and helped him up, and began to persuade him with bold words. Even if he made a mistake, Lin Tian would try his best to forgive them and say some words of comfort. After all, there are moths in the sect that he works so hard to establish, which is a big no-no. It's not that Qin Xian doesn't want to take care of it, on the contrary, he really wants to take care of it. Let them put down all guard, magnify the desires in their hearts infinitely, and then seize the benefits without any scruples. His eyes were extremely red, as if he had just cried a lot. Of course, this was all just acting. The sect will also be destroyed as a result. In the end, Lin Tian nodded after hearing this. In the next few days, he began to be kind to these people and gave them treasures. Sect Master, you must not do it. This Qin Feng is a beast and a wolf with ambition. He must have been instructed by the human temple when he came back this time, and he just wants to harm the section. Besides, he has not harmed the interests of the sect, and it cannot be said to be a betrayal, so from now on, the position of the master of the beast control peak will still be held by him. However, Qin Xian didn't care about it, just laughed it off and ignored it. This was an old man. His wrinkled face was full of sorrow, and he was kneeling there in tears. Let them indulge in returning to it, and finally cut off the road when they are about to reach the high road. Sitting on the first seat, Lin Tian saw that everyone was still chattering and insulting Qin Feng, and finally said a little impatiently, "Stop," and waved. This method can not only clean up these pests, but also draw out some maggots hiding in the dark. As the saying goes, play the long game to catch the big fish. This is the old man who followed Qin Xian from the lower world to the upper world, and joined the sect much earlier than himself. With his seniority, he cannot withstand such a big ceremony. Report the situation within the sect to the Human Palace Master, and then ask the Human Palace to send people to destroy our section. It can be said that it kills two birds with one stone. Qin Dian is like this now, so he said something to Lin Tian at the beginning of the plan. If one is not good, everything will be lost. That's enough, that's enough. You have scolded and said what you should say. But in the end, it is undeniable that he, Qin Feng, has always been my profound heaven section. Today he came back. Naturally, I cannot he expelled. This was flattery. Qin Xian just wanted Lin Tian to flatter them, making them proud, arrogant, and domineering. Qin Xian couldn't just watch the sect go down the road of destruction, so he came up with a plan. Lin Tian had already told Qin Xian all the deeds of these people. Let them fall down the cliff and into the netherworld, where they will never be reincarnated. A middle-aged man with a majestic appearance and an extraordinary temperament stood up and spoke righteously. And some cultivation resources. He wanted to use this to persuade Lin Tian to return to Qin Feng. As soon as these words came out, other people also agreed one by one and nodded solemnly. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 463. He hurriedly started to express his condolences. The old man seemed to want Lin Tian to look like this, and his face suddenly showed a look of grievance. She collapsed in Lin Tian's arms, complaining to him about Qin Feng's shortcomings like a little woman. Anyway, as long as the bad things are mentioned, all the things that are helpful to the sect are not mentioned. Lin Tian felt helpless when he saw this, but he still tried his best to endure it, patted the old man on the shoulder, and said comfortingly, "Don't worry, Sun Lao, I understand all your suggestions, and I also know that I will give him a time limit. If he does well within this time limit, he will stay. If he does not do well, then I will naturally not have any consequences." With a kind heart and a soft hand, he directly abolished his cultivation and expelled him from the section. Speaking of this, Lin Tian released a monstrous murderous intention, and the murderous intention descended into the hall and caused a chaos in the space. It's like I've fallen into a situation where the rules are broken. At this moment, everyone's expressions became solemn, and they looked at Lin Tian respectfully and in awe. Even the old man in front of him was like this, but when he thought of his identity as an old man, he didn't think anything of it. He wiped away his tears, nodded, arched his body and said, "The Lord is wise." Even after Xian returned to his position, although he was happy in his heart, he still looked at everyone without changing his expression. It seemed that everything just happened was for the good of the sect, without any selfishness at all. When the other old guys saw this scene, they looked at him with admiration and couldn't help but secretly gave him a big thumbs up. Sure enough, it has to be this old immortal. It's really hard to do it in our place. Although other peak masters and elders saw this scene, they still pretended to turn a blind eye and stood there calmly. But in my heart, I felt disdainful of these people's tricks. But there were also a few people who were close to these old men who shook their heads secretly and sighed slightly. You have reached a point of no return. I can only advise you to keep a low profile as much as possible, otherwise it will be your end. An old man with white hair and a majestic figure wearing a white robe murmured. Qin Xian, who was hiding in the dark, saw all this, and the killing intent in his eyes became more and more intense. It seemed that the next moment he would break out of the boundary and kill several people angrily. Lin Tian then returned to the first seat and looked down at everyone with a majestic expression. How dare a few ants be so bold and violate my realm of profound heaven sect? They are really looking for death. Even so, there are several immortal emperors who are watching him in the dark. If he has any intention of betraying the sect, he will die without a burial place. At this time, dozens of strange figures suddenly appeared near the mountain gate of Profound Heaven sect, all of them exuding extraordinary aura. Law Enforcement Hall, a cold and dark hall. After so many years, I finally came back. I don't know what the monsters I raised back then have grown up to now. When Dylan, who was hidden in Qin Feng's jade pendant, saw this scene, he smiled coldly, and a thought spread out. See what areas you need to pay attention to. Then Qin Feng walked towards the main hall of the Beast Control Peak. Wherever he passed, immortal sovereign elders would kneel down one after another. The flames rushed to everyone's bodies like a waterfall, and burned to ashes in just a few breaths. The voice was majestic and powerful, causing Qin Feng's heart to tremble slightly, a feeling he had not heard for a long time. But Qin Xian saw all this, but he didn't make any move, just watched quietly. This person is Digu, the current master of the Law Enforcement Hall. There was a crash. Several people were silent when they saw this, as they seemed to have become accustomed to it. Dylan joked, and then condensed a split soul, and asked this split soul to go to Profound Heaven Sect to check the situation on his behalf. It's really interesting. It seems that the power of Profound Heaven Sect is still underestimated. What happened just now was just a test, and the next step is the real action. However, Qin Feng didn't pay attention to these. After receiving this order, he retreated and returned to his original hometown. Dilindu, who was hiding in the jade pendant, saw this scene. I saw them shouting loudly. But he couldn't hide the surprise in his eyes. However, his expression did not change at all, as if he had already guessed that it would become like this. It seemed that he wanted to see what other tricks Dylan had up his sleeve. It's just that these Profound Heaven Sect people didn't pay attention, and even if they did, they didn't bother to care. Then the figure disappeared here, as if it had never appeared. Looking at the familiar yet somewhat unfamiliar scene on the Royal Beast Peak, he couldn't help but sigh. As the words fell, dozens of figures outside Profound Heaven Sect were suddenly trapped by a powerful dark aura. After all, someone will take care of this. One after another black lightning rushed into their limbs, and the black lightning was like an iron chain, locking them tightly, unable to move. When a leading man saw this scene, his expression remained unchanged, and with a slight movement of his palm, a black fireball swept towards everyone. After half a stick of incense, the order was issued, and Qin Feng became the peak master of the Beast Control Peak again as he wished. A middle-aged man wearing a black robe with loose hair hanging around his waist appeared here. The aura exuding from his body was like hell, with a smell of death. I'm waiting to welcome the peak master back. He raised his eyebrows slightly, looked out of the sect with his dark eyes, and then sneered. The next moment, several strong men from the Law Enforcement Palace, exuding murderous aura, appeared here. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 464. Royal Beast Peak. Gulangaya. Qin Feng came here with several accompanying elders. The terrain here is narrow and extremely dark, and strange sounds can be heard from time to time. This kind of sound can make people feel creepy, but the few accompanying elders seemed to be used to this scene. There wasn't much change in his complexion. Qin Feng didn't pay attention and walked towards the inside of Gilong Cliff. Everywhere he went, powerful monsters appeared one after another. These are the monsters that have been cultivated since the establishment of Yashao Peak. Once the sect is in crisis, these monsters will rush out of the sect and fight to the death with the enemy. The Royal Beast Peak is different from the Spirit Beast Peak. Although they all have monsters, monsters from the Beast Control Peak can sign contracts with other people. Let you have a monster partner. You can also control monster, and you can only contract one monster in your life. After the contract, neither of them can betray each other. Otherwise, he will be punished by heaven. The monsters in the Spirit Beast Peak can also sign contracts, but the qualifications of these monsters are too low, and the upper limit is only about the Immortal King. So most people would not be so stupid as to go to Spirit Beast Peak to make a contract with monster. Monsters in Spirit Beast Peak are usually used as mounts or to transport some resources. Half an hour later, Qin Feng led a few people to the interior of Gilong Cliff. The space here is wide and the immortal energy is concentrated. The scenery was also extremely beautiful. Qin Feng raised his eyes and saw a waterfall standing not far away. The water falling from the waterfall makes a sound like music. There is also a lake under the waterfall, where all kinds of monsters live, and they all have excellent qualifications. Qin Feng also saw a familiar figure inside. It is a wolf demon with a back and two wings and black hair. The wolf demon has an extremely domineering appearance and seems to be born to be a king. However, the current wolf demon did not look arrogant and domineering. Instead, it was crawling on the ground like a domestic dog. His expression is also extremely leisurely, as if he is enjoying the bath of sunshine and fairy spirit. Seeing this scene, Qin Feng smiled and walked towards it. The sound of footsteps immediately woke up the wolf demon, and its face instantly showed a vigilant look. A murderous intention also emerged along with the tide. The nearby monsters were frightened by the scene and hurriedly avoided it, as if they were afraid of the aura emanating from the wolf demon. "Don't you remember me?" Seeing the wolf demon's hostile eyes, Qin Feng smiled helplessly. But he still walked over, and with every step he took, the aura he exuded became stronger and stronger. So powerful that it directly overwhelms the wolf demon's momentum. Boom! The wolf demon was instantly suppressed by this momentum and fell to his knees, showing an expression of pain and wailing incessantly. Qin Feng still had no intention of stopping. At this time, he walked up to the wolf demon. Seeing the wolf demon's appearance, he touched its head without changing his expression and said softly, "You haven't been here for so many years, why do you forget your master so soon?" Hearing this very familiar voice, the wolf demon, who had a painful expression, was suddenly shocked for a while, and then he reacted. The hostile expression instantly turned into happiness and excitement. And the coercion emanating from Qin Feng also disappeared at this moment. The wolf demon sat up from the ground, bent its crescent moon, circled around Qin Feng, and kept calling. Seeing this scene, Dylan smiled in his heart, but he was not carried away by desire. Instead, he looked around for a while and then swam over with a vigilant expression. At this time, inside the jade pendant, all the information about the wolf demon also appeared in his mind. After the words fell, a silver-white magic circle appeared under the feet of the two, and a wisp of white light began to revolve around the two. It's the kind of crazy love a child has for his father. Qin Feng smiled softly, touched the wolf demon's hair, then looked elsewhere and asked. The wolf demon showed an expectant look. Master, you are finally back. Little Wolf has been waiting for you for many years." It couldn't be happier at this moment, as if it had eaten the most delicious food in the world. He smelled a very special medicinal fragrance in it, but he couldn't guess its name. The same goes for wolf monsters. "Master, those guys have already left here long ago after seeing you haven't come back for a long time, and have contracted with other geniuses. Dylan didn't care about this, and swam in after thinking for a while. Of course, and from today on, you will be my contract beast in my life. There are no disciples guarding the outside of the temple, only two lifelike giant statues standing here. Qin Feng looked at him and smiled, nodded, and said. Seeing this scene, the wolf demon said nothing more. Dylan didn't know all this, and now he was controlling his own soul to wander in the profound heaven sect. Moreover, Dylan secretly felt that this medicinal fragrance was what he wanted in his heart. Hearing this, Qin Feng nodded slightly, his expression still unchanged. He put his hands behind his back and said calmly. That's all, everything ultimately belongs to me. At least they have found their own master. He snorted coldly and replied. Master, are you here to take me out now? Qin Feng didn't say anything. He took a look around and left with the wolf demon. Where are those guys? Why aren't they with you? A huge alchemy furnace appeared in the center of the hall. After a while, he came to a magnificent hall. Now it finally got its wish. The whole body is surrounded by clouds and mist, and the fragrance of elixirs overflows. It seems that there is some mysterious elixir hidden in this alchemy furnace. After all, he had been taken with Qin Feng since he was a child, and he had a very strong relationship with Qin Feng for a long time. Upon hearing this, the wolf demon's facial expression instantly turned cold. In the palace. Although it is a monster cultivated by Qin Feng, it is just a monster and has not signed a contract with it. There was a roar and a commotion in the sky, and a wolf-shaped mark appeared on Qin Feng's eyebrows. Appraisal of the contract has always been a pain in the wolf monster heart. It always wants to sign a contract with Qin Feng and become his contracted beast. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 465. The closer he got to this alchemy furnace, the stronger the attraction in his mind became, which made Dylan really curious about what was in this alchemy furnace that could make him show such an expression. It was at the moment when Dylan was about to open the alchemy furnace. Click. A sense of fragmentation of space spread throughout the entire hall. The next moment, the extremely powerful power of law turned into countless chains and rushed into the hall. The thought was like a spider web that blocked the entire hall. One after another, the great Dao laws emerged from the chains. In an instant, the great Dao appeared in the space, and an old man wearing a white robe, facing Charity and with a long beard came across the space. Seeing this, Dylan immediately stopped what he was doing and looked back, with a hint of shock in his eyes. He saw the old man in white robe staring at him with a pair of cloudy eyes. The extremely powerful power of the great Dao threatened him. Golden light was shining everywhere, and the old man was safe and sound. Seeing the several golden dragons coming towards him, Dylan's expression remained unchanged. He raised his left arm slightly and condensed a chaotic power. But that didn't surprise him. What surprised him was that the old man in front of him turned out to be a shadow. Old guy, although I don't know who you are, judging from the moves you just released and your aura, if nothing else, you should be from Dragon race, right? Hundreds of rounds have been fought in a short period of time. But there was still no change in the old man's expression. He stepped hard with his left foot, and the great Dao Law condensed a guardian spirit to guard in front of him. Only the alchemy furnace remained intact in the field. Dylan narrowed his eyes and asked in a low voice. It can also be called a divided soul. After hearing this, the white-robed old man's expression remained unchanged and he did not speak. The next moment, halos appeared one after another around the old man. He wanted to see who was stronger between Zalong's soul and Dylan's soul. Immortal Emperor Peak. Boom. But the fight just now doubled his pressure, which meant that the person in front of him was definitely extraordinary. The terrifying sound exploded throughout the hall. That person? After a fight, Dylan also noticed the strength of the person in front of him. Dylan couldn't figure out the person in front of him and couldn't help but asked. The halo turned into golden dragons attacking him one after another. The strength of Emperor Lin's split soul is also around the peak of Immortal Emperor. The power of chaos turned into a huge wall to block the incoming golden dragons, and also turned into its own strength to bounce back to the old man. The two have started a fierce battle. At this time, inside the palace, Qin Xian, who was watching in the dark, did not speak when he saw this scene, but just smiled. Space cracks and void cracks are everywhere. The roaring and popping sounds continued. Dylan's face became alert, a golden jade sword appeared in his hand, and a huge divine power emanated from his body. The power of countless laws cuts through the space. Who are you? Why are you aware that I am here? This sentence made Dylan raise his eyebrows. He thought it was the old man showing off and didn't pay much attention to it. This sentence finally made a slight change in the old man's dull expression, but he did not choose to hide it, nodded and said, I advise you to step back, otherwise it won't be me you meet later, but that person. The next moment, there was a bang. Fortunately, every hall in Profound Heaven Sect is guarded by a top-notch soundproofing array. Otherwise, such a vast sound would have attracted other powerful people. Now that you've guessed it's me, you should understand that you are no match for me. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 466. Seeing this situation, Dylan frowned and stepped aside. In the battle just now, he probably understood that with his current strength, he couldn't defeat the person in front of him. The bloodline of the top dragon race cannot be matched by him alone. Moreover, this is just his split soul. If the main body is here, it will be more or less the same. Even if the real body comes by then, it will still have the power to fight. Across from him, Zilong raised his eyebrows when he saw Dylan motionless. The golden dragon surrounding him gradually disappeared, and he said in a cold voice, You are not strong enough. I will give you half a stick of incense to leave, otherwise I will directly disperse your ghost in a moment. Upon hearing this, Emperor Lin snorted coldly, and went up to fight Zilong directly without being angry. The golden jade sword disappeared, and then he turned into a stream of light and left here, but before leaving, he still took a deep look at Zilong. Seeing this, Zilong let out a breath. After taking a closer look at the alchemy furnace located in the center of the hall, he left. His split soul was transformed from a drop of his own blood and it would not last long. It would be too difficult, even impossible, to truly eliminate the Dylan soul. When Qin Xian, who was hiding in the dark, saw this scene, he just smiled and then moved his fingers slightly. The next moment, two powerful immortal emperors from Dragon Race appeared in the Profound Heaven Sect. After a lot of searching, the location of Emperor Lin's divided soul was locked. Boom! I saw a sky-like fireball falling from the sky, with extremely terrifying power, directly hitting a giant peak in Profound Heaven Sect. Dylan was caught off guard and was hit by a fireball. He was seriously injured and vomited blood. Before he could react immediately, several space chains tied him tightly, making him unable to move at all. And this shocking scene and huge sound naturally attracted the attention of all the elders and disciples of the sect. Everyone came here with clouds and swords to watch. But before he got close, he was stopped by several ancient saints wearing law enforcement robes. The strong men of the sect will handle the important matters, while the rest will retreat quickly. A man in black robes, full of murderous intent, looked at everyone coldly, and several sword auras flashed in front of him. It seems that once no one takes any action, he will attack directly without mercy. Everyone who heard this looked at each other and did not dare to talk back. They could only retreat to the side timidly. There was a hint of panic in his eyes. But some people are curious, what on earth could attract the attention of the powerful ancient saint? And what exactly could cause such power? Everyone looked a little confused and puzzled. At this time, the master of the seven peaks also came here. Everyone frowned at the scene in front of them. On the giant peak, Dylan, who was seriously injured, looked around and looked at everyone with vigilant eyes. Finally, he fixed his gaze on the two dragon race immortal emperors, gritted his teeth and threatened. "Give you a chance, let me go, otherwise Profound Heaven Sect will suffer disaster." Hearing this, the two of them smiled disdainfully and looked at him with their arms crossed. "Profound Heaven Sect has suffered a lot of disasters, and you are not missing. Threatening us has no effect. What makes me curious is, as the master of the human temple, why did you come to my Profound Heaven Sect?" A strong dragon race man wearing a fiery red robe with great dao of fire all over his body looked at him and asked doubtfully. But before Emperor Lin could say anything, the powerful dragon race immortal emperor on the side began to explain. "What else could there be? You must be taking this opportunity to find out my current strength in Profound Heaven section Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system." Author, Red General. Chapter 467. Having said this, the immortal emperor glanced at Dylan subconsciously, and then seemed to have guessed something. His eyes lit up and he said in amazement, "I never expected that you would be able to fight against the top warriors of our dragon race." "What? The top player in my dragon race?" The fire dragon on the side was shocked when he heard these words, and he was astonished in his heart as if a stormy sea was swimming by. "If you put it this way, it's pretty good if the person in front of you can survive in the hands of their ancestral dragon." But the fire dragon shook his head again. "Now is not the time to think about these things, but the time to deal with the guy in front of you." The fire dragon coughed slightly and looked at Dylan with a murderous look in his eyes. He naturally saw that the person in front of him was a divided soul. Therefore, killing him is not advisable, and trapping him is the best option. Thinking of this, the fire dragon did as he said. In the next moment, the fire dragon mobilized the great Dao Law to condense black magic rings one after another. The black fire ring was burning with blazing fire, and then it rushed to Dylan's eyebrows and locked his soul. This also means that the split soul has become a puppet, and Dylan is not qualified to mobilize him anymore. Unless he shows up in person and breaks the magic ring. The jade pendant is in. Dylan opened his eyes suddenly, a trace of cold sweat appeared on his forehead, then clenched his fists, raised his eyes to look somewhere, and snorted coldly. "Damn it, I miscalculated. I didn't expect that there would be a powerful dragon race ancestor sitting in the Profound Heaven section. Except for that guy, there should be no one who is the founder of dragon race." Dylan lowered his eyes and fell into thinking. After a while, he sighed, put his hands behind his back, and murmured. "After all, I still underestimated him Profound Heaven section." Dylan frowned, his brows full of confusion. He didn't understand what benefits Profound Heaven Sect had given dragon race, and it could actually invite Z along. Ancestral Dragon and Profound Heaven Sect stand together. Doesn't this mean that Profound Heaven Sect already has the strength to fight against my human temple? Dylan looked at his hands and his eyes kept moving. He was not angry, because he knew that anger had no effect at all. On the contrary, it will make you lose your mind and fall into the abyss. After living for so many years, Dylan has clearly seen everything in the world, and he no longer values life and death. What he values now is strength, stronger strength, strong enough to surpass the strength of the Domain Lord. Being able to gain great strength, even if it costs him his life, he will nod in agreement without hesitation. Profound Heaven Sect, Demon Race, Monster Race, Dragon Race, and the Phoenix Clan. Dylan began to mutter to himself, and when he mentioned the Feng Clan, his expression froze. There was a glimmer of light in his eyes. Yes, why did I forget about the Phoenix clan? The Phoenix clan's strength is not worse than Dragon race. What's more, the Phoenix clan can control all the bird monsters, even the monster race can't control them. If I unite with him, then... Dylan suddenly let out an evil smile. This expression simply did not match his majestic appearance. But Dylan didn't care about his expression. Now that the plan has been broken, it is somewhat impossible for Qin Feng to become the master of Profound Heaven Sect. Then Dylan tore the void in front of him with his bare hands and returned to the human temple across space. And quickly called Ji Qing to come over. In the deliberation hall. After receiving the order, Jiking did not dare to neglect, and quickly came here, leaned over to Dylan, cupped his hands and said, "Palace Master. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system." Author, Red General. Chapter 468. Dylan nodded slightly and looked at him with his hands behind his back. He told Ji Qing everything he encountered in the Profound Heaven Sect. After listening, Jiking's expression suddenly changed and he said hesitantly, "This, Palace Master, if this is really the case, it will be even more difficult for Qin Feng to become the master of Profound Heaven section." "Yes," Dylan sighed, a trace of sadness flashed between his brows. What could have been completed successfully, however, fell short due to the intervention of Dragon race. But there is no way. The Dragon race plus the Profound Heaven sect, plus the demon race outside, with the strength of my human temple alone, cannot withstand it. So. Ji Qing looked at him, her eyes flashing with golden light, as if she had guessed what Dylan was going to say next. Dylan continued. "I have thought about it. If we, the current strength of the human race temple, want to solve the behemoth Profound Heaven sect, we must borrow the hands of other forces. Otherwise, forcibly destroying him will only cause great damage to the power of our human temple." "Which force does the Palace Master want to cooperate with?" Ji Qing asked. "And this force is the Phoenix clan, which is as famous as Dragon race." "Phoenix clan?" Jiking frowned, her expression changing. "It's not that he doesn't want to cooperate with the Phoenix clan. But the Feng clan is hidden on the other side of the Zhifeng Immortal River. It is said that the Nine Phoenix Immortal River was established by the blood of several phoenixes. There are countless great Dao laws scattered there. Except for members of the Feng clan, there is no difference between anyone else wanting to enter and seeking death. What's more, the Phoenix clan also has a powerful ancestor. The Phoenix clan itself is very rare, with only a few Phoenix clans surviving. The fact that they are alive today is all because of their caution." Thinking of this, Jiking raised her eyes to look at Dylan, leaned over and cupped her hands and said, "Lord Hall Master, you also know the situation of the Phoenix clan, not to mention they are extremely cautious. Will they really help us?" After hearing this, Emperor Lin chuckled lightly, and a token with the Phoenix rune appeared in his hand. "What do you think this is?" Hearing this, Jiking looked over quickly. "This is..." Jiking raised his eyebrows. Suddenly, his pupils shrank, his face was stunned, and he blurted out, "This is the Phoenix Order." Dylan nodded with a smile and replied calmly, "Yes, this is the Phoenix Order." But this made Jiking look a little confused, and couldn't help but ask, "I wonder if the master of the palace can tell me how to obtain this thing? I remember that generally speaking, this thing seems to be only available to high-ranking people in the Phoenix clan. It won't happen to the outside world at all." After hearing this, Emperor Lin smiled and said nothing, but his eyes gradually became trance-like and he looked into the distance. At this time, he seemed to have returned to his youth. "This started when I was a disciple of the lower palace. Back then, I was just like an ordinary person. I didn't have any top talents or any background. It was only because of my strong willpower and the courage to fight that I became the top player I am today. Jiking remained silent and continued to listen. He was also very curious, what was Dylan like when he was a boy? At that time, I went to accept a mission. The requirement of the mission was to capture a tiger horn demon. During the capture process, I met a woman who was as beautiful as a celestial immortal. After getting along with her for a few days, I also found out her identity. She is the saintess of the Feng clan, and she is also the person who will become the Fengzhu in the future. I was very surprised when I heard the news at that time, and I never thought that I would meet such a person. I never thought that I would end up alone for the rest of my life because of this woman. Time goes back several epochs. A valley full of flowers and plants. The environment here is elegant and full of beautiful scenery. Butterflies are playing in the flowers and plants, and bees are buzzing. Two figures appear here. One person was wearing a white robe and had a handsome face. Perhaps because he often participated in fighting, he had a strong murderous aura about him. This person is the young Dylan. At this time, his face was still a little immature, and his eyes were full of complexity and unwillingness towards the person in front of him. He saw a woman standing in front of him. The woman is as beautiful as celestial immortal, her eyes are as bright as pearls, and her body exudes a noble and inviolable temperament. It cannot be like how lovers get married and stay together for a lifetime of happiness. The woman lowered her head and said softly. Her selfish desires are so insignificant in the face of these national interests. Dylan shed tears and looked at the woman with a sobbing voice. He held his palms tightly, as if he was angry at the woman's leaving. If given the chance, she would never be the saintess of the Phoenix clan again, but an ordinary woman. What do you want me to do with my heart? What do you want me to do with my life? The woman's beautiful eyes were filled with tears, and when she said these words, her tone was still choked with sobs. She was dressed in a white dress, with long hair hanging over her shoulders, and her cold and charming face was full of apologies for Dylan. She doesn't want to either. She doesn't want to leave Dylan either. But the tears couldn't stop falling from his cheeks. Coming out this time also violated the rules of the clan. It was a good thing that the clan did not send strong men to take her back by force. You know, I can't live without you for a long time, I've been with you these past few months, and I'm very happy. The tearing pain had already arisen in his heart. But just like reality, people who love each other have no choice but to leave due to various reasons and various things. I felt helpless and confused about life, and your appearance was like a dawn, rushing into my heart and bringing back the self that should have fallen into the abyss. A woman with a little talent who stays with her lover. Ah! You speak. But today he couldn't help it. He didn't know why he was crying or why he said these words. I feel very happy to be with you these days, and thank you for staying with me for so long. When he was a boy, Dylan's eyes were full of confusion about feelings. He didn't know how to treat someone. Inseparable wavering. The only thing he knew was that the woman in front of him had already shaken his heart. But fate is fickle, and the two of them may only have this fate. God is causing trouble and is unfair to the two of them. So he has always been disdainful of people who cry. Youngzi, do you really want to be so heartless? You leave just as you say, so what should I do? He literally yelled these words. He has never cried since he was a child. He thinks crying is useless and only a self-destructive person can cry. Love is already a luxury wish in her eyes. This is a feeling I have never experienced before. I thought my life would be filled with fighting and fighting for my life. I thought I would die in the mouth of a monster or at the feet of a strong man. But, she had no choice. Her fate had been arranged since she was born. You want to leave, why didn't you tell me earlier? Did everything you said before lie to me? Did you just want to play with my feelings? As a saintess, she is the sole heir of the Phoenix clan, and she is the one who will lead the Phoenix clan on the road to becoming a powerful clan. His words were filled with apologies for Dylan and a helpless expression of unwillingness to leave him. "Dylan, I'm sorry. Because of some things, I need to go back as soon as possible. The clan has sent me a letter, maybe you and I will never see each other again." The woman clenched her clothes tightly in her hands and kept avoiding him, not daring to raise her head to look directly into Dylan's eyes. "You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 469. She wiped the tears from her eyes and turned around. The sun shone on her body, and she was as dazzling as the divine maiden at this moment. It's almost time, she should go. "Dylan, come here, there are countless regrets in the world, and there is no shortage of both of us. You and I are just slightly shining stars among countless stars. Regret is the norm. I understand your feelings very well, but I can't help myself. I have already been tied to a ship and can't break free. I have no choice of my own. But you are different, you are someone who will not be locked up by anything. You should be careful when walking alone in the future. Don't act out of emotion, you must know how to think with your brain. Besides, it's not like we won't have the chance to meet each other in the future." The woman kept walking forward, word after word coming out of her mouth. At the end, she stopped. He glanced sideways at Dylan for the last time, and turned into a phoenix under the sunlight and left. Only a token with a phoenix pattern was left behind. By this time, Dylan had already burst into tears. The tearing pain caused his chest to keep rising and falling, and tears fell like raindrops. His legs seemed to have been hit hard by something, and he fell to his knees in despair. He fell to his knees, feeling helpless and hopeless. The departure of the dawn in his life frightened him. He didn't know how to go or what he should do in the future. A woman is like a house, shielding her from the heavy rain and strong wind, but leaving now means that the house has been broken. Nothing could cover him, and he became a loner again. "Youngzi, Youngzi." Dylan held tightly the things left by the woman in his palms. After crying for a while, his tears had dried up. There were dried tears all over her cheeks. Finally, he stood up, found a nearby lake, and washed his face with water. With tears streaming down his face, he began to calm down, took a slight breath, and looked at his face reflected on the lake. Finally, he smiled sarcastically, straightened his body, and left here with a cold expression. It was here that he planted the seed of becoming stronger. Palace Master. After listening to Dylan's self-narration, Ji Qing felt a flash of sympathy in his heart. He did not expect that Dylan would have such an experience. But Dylan didn't pay attention to Ji Qing's expression. After saying this, he felt much more comfortable, and it seemed that all his worries had disappeared at this moment. Then Dylan took back his emotions and whispered, "It's time to go see her." Hearing this, Jiking did not speak, but nodded slightly. Since Dylan has such experience and has such a past friendship with Feng Ziu, it means that the cooperation has been completed. There is no need to say anything more. Finally, Dylan and Ji Qing disappeared into the hall. The powerful immortal emperor who was originally lurking near the profound heaven sect also left under Emperor Lin's instructions. A few days later, Zhifengxian He. The place is full of fairy spirit and beautiful scenery, just like a paradise. The place where Dylan and Jiking went was where the 9 immortals Qingfeng clan lived. One after another powerful pressure spread around. Hearing this, Dylan felt slightly disappointed, but his facial expression remained extremely calm. I saw that the voice in the sky was filled with densely packed strong men of the Phoenix clan, all of whom looked at the two of them with vigilant eyes. Hearing this, the phoenix in front of her transformed into a human form in a burst of light, revealing her appearance. Before the two of them could say anything, Dylan directly used the Great Dao Law to control the two of them. Seeing this scene, Dylan showed a smile. Looking at Feng Guang's wary eyes, Dylan laughed, leaned down in front of everyone's surprised eyes, cupped his hands and said, "Fengzhu, I haven't seen you for many years. How are you?" Her long hair danced gently in the breeze, and a strange fragrance emanated from her body, making people blush and feel their stomachs tremble. With the Phoenix Order, the two of them will not be noticed by the disaster, let alone the strong people of the Phoenix clan. Immediately, his body transformed into a stream of light and appeared in front of the Phoenix. "We haven't seen her for many years, and she has become more mature and charming," Dylan marveled in his heart, his eyes a little complicated. "Finally waiting for you." After all, the person he wanted to wait for was Fengzhu. After a few breaths, the figures of Dylan and Ji Qing appeared here. Although the 9 Immortals Green Phoenix are the most powerful among the Phoenix clan, they are also one of the very few. Seeing this situation, the two of them were shocked. Then a phoenix that was 100 feet long and exuded a mighty momentum appeared in front of Dylan's eyes. Fengzhu looked at him with raised eyebrows, his voice was so soft that it flashed through everyone's ears like a melody. Dylan looked around for a while and then walked toward an island with Ji Qing. "They are Fire Phoenix, Ice Phoenix, Black Phoenix, Thunder Phoenix, and the most powerful 9 Immortal Green Phoenix among the Phoenix clan." After half a stick of incense, the two arrived here. Their eyes were full of disbelief at Dylan's appearance, but they did not dare to act rashly and could only report to Fengzhu secretly. "Who are you? I seem to have never seen you before, right?" After a cup of tea, the originally calm island suddenly began to shake violently. However, as soon as they appeared, they were noticed by the powerful men of the 9 Immortals Qingfeng clan. "So I came to the idea easily. The strength exuded by this phoenix is no weaker than Dylan, and it even has the faint intention of catching up." At this moment, she was as dazzling as the Divine Maiden. Dylan saw everything the two of them did, but he didn't care at all. Her face was cold and beautiful, her beautiful eyes were sharp, and she was dressed in a fiery red robe that covered her protruding figure. There are 5 places on the island. It is also in the lives of the 5 major ethnic groups of the Feng clan today. The next moment, 2 powerful immortal emperors appeared in front of them. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 470. Master Fengzhu is really forgetful. A few epochs ago, you and I stayed together like a little girl and a little boy, but now we have forgotten. Dylan shook his head helplessly, his tone revealing a hint of complaint. Having said this, he paused for a while and said mockingly, "But yes, Lord Fengzhu's identity is no longer what it used to be. How can he remember me, a boy with no background?" As soon as these words came out, the people around him suddenly looked confused and looked at each other in confusion. When Fengzhu heard this, his cold and charming face was slightly startled, he looked at Dylan in surprise, and said with some disbelief, You did, Lin." Dylan nodded with a smile, put his hands behind his back, looked at her deeply, and replied softly, "It's me. I haven't seen you for many years. Are you, okay?" As soon as these words came out, Fengzhu was stunned for a moment. My thoughts seemed to be brought back to the past. The figure in his mind that he missed so much gradually began to merge with the person in front of him. The person she had longed for finally appeared in front of her today, and she became excited and excited. But in this public place, she didn't dare to express anything, and looked at Dylan with an apologetic look. This scene caused everyone present to scream in surprise, and everyone looked at the scene with horrified expressions. Started talking among each other. Looking at this appearance, their Phoenix ancestors seemed to really know the fight in front of him. And there seems to be an unspeakable secret between the two. The conversation among the people was extremely complicated. Some say that Dylan is Fengzhu's lover, while others say that Dylan is Feng Xiu's left-behind brother. Anyway, all the strange words were said here. This made Feng Xiu blush a little, showing a delicate and shy feeling. When Ji Qing, who was standing behind Dylan, saw this scene, she couldn't help but sigh. Although Dylan had already told him about his past, when he actually saw it, he couldn't help but feel deeply moved. Who would have thought that two top experts would have such an amazing relationship a few years ago? This scene lasted for half a stick of incense. Finally, Feng Xiu reacted, coughed heavily, and dispersed everyone here. He immediately calmed down and walked up to Dylan, looking him up and down with a pair of crystal clear eyes. He couldn't help but nodded with satisfaction and smiled softly. It seems that you have grown a lot over the years, even your strength is comparable to mine. Upon hearing this, Emperor Lin smiled softly and took half a step back, as if he wanted to clear the line between the past and Feng Xiu. Seeing this scene, Feng Xiu's pupils shrank and his expression was a little embarrassed, but in the end he didn't say anything. After all, what happened back then has been a long time ago, and the two of them have long been strangers, and they are no longer what they used to be. No one is standing still, nor will they be waiting for you to come back. Seeing this scene, Ji Qing behind him sighed slightly, and his figure turned into dust and smoke and disappeared here. At this moment, there are only two of them here. Swish, swish, swish. The gentle breeze blew their robes, the atmosphere was a little awkward, and neither of them spoke. After a long time, Feng Xiu broke the silence. She raised her beautiful eyes, stared at Dylan closely, bit her lips lightly, and uttered two sentences. Dylan, are you blaming me in your heart? Are you blaming me for abandoning you? After hearing this, Dylan glanced at her with mixed feelings in his heart, but still replied with an unchanged expression. Strange, but not strange. In the past few years, I have experienced a lot. I have also been indifferent to life, death, and emotions in this world. Let everything in the past pass by. I came to see you today. I don't want to talk about this. I just want to discuss something with you. I wonder if Feng Xiu is free now. Hearing this, Feng Xiu's beautiful eyes dimmed a little. After being disappointed for a moment, he straightened up and nodded. Yes, what do you want to discuss with me? Dylan looked at her. I want to represent the human temple and form an alliance with your Phoenix clan. What? Feng Xiu looked stunned and frowned, all the emotions he had just been restrained. It seemed that she was the real Feng Xiu at this moment. No, Dylan was a little disappointed. Since Feng Xiu glanced at him and wanted to say no, but she still didn't object immediately because she missed the old friendship. After calming down slightly, he replied softly. This matter is too important and I need time to think about it. Although I am Feng Xiu, the entire Feng clan is not mine. I need to discuss it with other people before I can give you the answer. Besides, there are some situations. I believe you also know that our Phoenix clan has said many years ago that we will not interfere in anything in the 10 domains. Seeing this situation, Dylan didn't say much, but nodded slightly. I wonder how long you want to discuss, Dylan asked again. This. After hearing this, Feng Xiu lowered his head, with a somewhat hesitant look on his face, but seemed to have made up his mind and replied. 3 days will do. Okay, I'll wait. Seeing that he got the answer he wanted, Dylan didn't ask any more questions and nodded. Immediately, Dylan turned around and prepared to leave. At this moment, Feng Xiu's eyes were a little complicated, and he couldn't control his emotions and shouted. You don't like me anymore. Dylan, who was about to leave, was startled, with a wry smile on his face. Like it? Why don't you like it? This is the person who can make him lonely for the rest of his life. If he didn't like her, I'm afraid Dylan would already have a family full of descendants. It's a pity that Dylan didn't want to say these words, and he didn't dare to say them. After so many years, He didn't know if Yungzi was still the same Yungzi as before. He was afraid that if he expressed it to her, she would reject it, which made him afraid to gamble. Sometimes when it comes to feelings, Dylan is as innocent and simple as a child, not understanding the world. But does he really not understand? As the ancestor of the strong man, he could be said to have trampled on the bones of all sentient beings along the way. Countless geniuses died in his hands, enough to form a mountain. He also wrested the position of the master of the human temple from those people through ruthless tactics. But in front of feelings, all living beings are equal, and so is he. No one can put aside their own emotions and desires. After all, then, they would not be considered a human being. A person must have feelings and desires. Without these, what's the point of being a human being? How lonely and boring it is. Dylan didn't want to and didn't want to. Finally Dylan turned around and looked at her. At this moment, Fengzu looked at him with an extremely expectant expression. His eyes were slowly filled with tears, and it seemed that they would fall down in the next moment. Seeing this scene, Dylan felt a pain in his heart, but he still clenched his fists, endured it, and answered with cold eyes. I don't like you anymore. I haven't liked you since the time you left me. The Dylan who loved you back then has died long ago. What you see now is the master of the human temple. As soon as she said these words, Fengzu's beautiful eyes trembled, as if thunder and lightning struck her mind, making her tremble and cry, and finally stood there sobbing.